Just in case you don't know who I am, I'm Christine Tudhope. I'm a chartered accountant and I'm the founder and chief disruptor of UPvisor, which you can see behind me. And we are talking all about hashtag Excel Live. Thursdays on Instagram is all about making sure that we are being productive. So we've got profitability on a Friday, but on a Thursday we speak about productivity. And if you do not know, productivity is clearly linked to profitability. So we have to make sure that we are making use of our time really wisely. And one of the ways that we can do that is by improving our Excel skills. So over the past 3 weeks now, we've been speaking all about Excel, and last week we spoke about pivot tables. And pivot tables is something that not a lot of people deal with, but they might see quite often. And it's really a useful tool to be able to help us to save a lot of time. So last week I promised that we would be speaking about navigation today. And being able to move around in Excel really easily and quickly is key to making sure that we are able to get the most out of the software. And a lot of people like using their mouse. But unfortunately, if you think about it, every time you move your hands off of the keyboard and onto the mouse, you're wasting time. And maybe it sounds really silly, and it's quick to move your hand to your mouse. But if you think about all of the time that you're spending switching from one thing to another, that's the same way as multitasking, where we are losing focus and we are being inefficient in the way that we are moving around. We want to try and cut down on that because cumulatively all of that time adds up. So the way that we can really make sure that we are using our time wisely and effectively is by being able to navigate through Excel well. Now, one of the main ways that we can move through Excel easily and quickly is by using our keyboard. And there are many different ways to be able to use our keyboard to navigate through Excel. And I'm going to mention some of them, but maybe before I get to the keyboard itself, let's just think about how we can move using our mouse. So if you think about it, we have those scroll bars that go up and down and left to right, right? So those would be really easy. And we have scroll bars and we have scroll buttons, which are the little arrows, the little triangles that are at the bottom of the scroll bars. And they behave slightly differently. You might have seen that you can't actually scroll past, if you're using your scroll bars, you can't scroll past a certain point, and that is all because there is no content going past that. So if you want to go past that point, use your scroll buttons or your scroll arrows. So that's an example. You could potentially even use the scrolling button on your mouse if you have one with a rolling ball. Or alternatively, the easiest would always be to use your keyboard. So let's think about our keyboard. Basically, our basic ones that everyone would be familiar with is using your arrow keys. So arrow keys going up and down, left and right. And then we have our tab button, which also allows us to go right. So we've got the arrow key that goes right and we've got the tab button that goes right, but the behavior is slightly different. So we've got that, as well as if we press shift in front of something, then you will find that it goes in the opposite direction. So shift and tab makes you go left, as opposed to just tab making you go right. Then we have the enter key, which makes you go one line down. And so shift enter in front of it makes it go back up. So those are quite useful to keep in mind. Then what else do we have? If you look at your keyboard, you will see that you also have a button that's called home, and you might be familiar with this. Now, if we press home on its own, it's going to take us to the first column in the row that we are in. So if I'm currently in I10 and I press home, it's going to take me to the cell A10. Okay, that should be relatively straightforward. But now, what if I want to go to the first cell in my sheet altogether? So I want to go to A1 all the way at the top. So the way that I would do that is to start using some keyboard shortcuts. And keyboard shortcuts in Excel is really helpful to be aware of, and it helps you to stop moving between your keyboard and your mouse. So if I say Control Home, that is going to take me all the way to A1, unless, there's one caveat, unless I have freeze panes switched on. Okay, so I'll get to freeze panes just now. Okay, so Control Home is a good example. And then we've got page up and page down as well. Now, if you think about it, your arrow keys move one cell at a time, either up or down or left to right. But what page up and page down allows us to do is to jump an entire screen. So instead of moving one row at a time, you might end up jumping 20 rows at a time just because you're using page up and page down. Now there's another keyboard shortcut here. If we say Control Page Up or Control Page Down, we are going to end up jumping between our sheets. So if you want to go from sheet 1 to sheet 2, you'll use Control Page Down. And if you want to go back from sheet 2 back to sheet 1, you'll use Control Page Up. Okay, so it's really useful to know about all of these keyboard shortcuts. And there are a whole array of different keyboard shortcuts that we can use. And what we will do as part of this lesson, I guess it's a lesson, we will link in one of the blog posts that we wrote that talks all about keyboard shortcuts, and there you'll be able to find a download or a printable that you can then go look at, and it has an awesome summary of all of the different, hi Elaine, of all of the different keyboard shortcuts that you can check out. Okay, so do make sure that you check out that resource. It's a really valuable one to keep in mind, because if you can start using keyboard shortcuts, even if you just start using 3, you can gradually start growing it and improving it, and the more you use them, the more time you'll be able to save. Okay, so check those out. And then I promised that I would be talking about freeze panes. Now, freeze panes is useful if we have a big set of data and you want to still be able to see your headings either in the first row or in a specific row, as well as a column. Now we can find freeze panes on our view ribbon, and then under the Windows group you will find that there's an option called freeze panes. When we have a look at freeze panes, you'll see that there are 3 options that come up. Now I'm going to talk about number 2 and 3 first, and then I'll jump back to number 1. So if you think about the second option is called freeze first row. Now what that will do is it will always freeze row number 1 in my sheet. So it doesn't matter where my headings are, it doesn't matter where I've got content, it's always going to freeze row number 1. So what it does is it freezes row number 1, which means it will always keep row number 1 visible regardless of where I am in my sheet. So I can scroll down to line number 1001 and I'll still be able to see row number 1. The same goes for the third option. The third option is freeze first column. So if you think about it, in your sheet, the first column is column A, right? So column A will be frozen. Now I can scroll up and down and I won't see row number 1 anymore. But now if I scroll left to right, I'll always be able to see column A at all times. But now what happens if the information that I'm wanting to see, my headings either in my rows or in my columns, are not in column A and are not in row number 1? And over and above that, I want to see both my rows and my columns fixed at all times. Well, that is when we use the first option, which is called just freeze panes. And what that first one will do is it will freeze it based on your current selection. What that means is where your cursor currently is, it will freeze all of the rows above your cursor and all of the columns to the left of your cursor. So if I'm wanting to make sure that row number 2 is always visible and I want to see column A, B, and C, then I'm going to put my cursor in cell D3, because now if you think about it, D3, it's going to freeze everything to the left, so A, B, and C will be visible, and D3 will show everything that is above it, so row number 1 and 2 will be visible. Okay, and then sometimes we find that we receive a file from someone else and we can't understand why we can't see all of the information, and often that is because they have switched on freeze panes. So an easy way to check where they have switched on freeze panes is to use Control Home, because what Control Home will then do is it will go to the cell that they selected when they switched on their freeze panes. Then at least you'll be able to see what they've done. And if you want to get rid of them, then you just go back to View, Windows, and you go unfreeze your panes, and then everything will return to normal. So if you can master keyboard shortcuts and you can master freeze panes, they're really easy to understand. Just putting some of those practices in place is going to save you a whole lot of time as you're going forward. So I really want to encourage you to play with those and to see how you can improve your efficiencies just by navigating through Excel well. So next week, what we will be talking about is the top 5 Excel hacks that I would like to share with you as a beginner, and maybe there'll be some intermediate things there, but really good hacks just for anyone to make sure that they can master to save you a whole lot of time. Okay, so that is what you can expect from us for next week. If you're joining us on Facebook tomorrow for #Finance Friday, we'll be talking about taking your business online. And it's more than just putting a website in place or having digital marketing strategies. It's more than that, right? Taking your business online has a lot of downstream implications on your customers, on your employees, on your communication strategy, all of those options. So I want to encourage you to join in for that. So if there are any questions about navigating Excel and being able to improve your efficiencies in Excel, please do pop us a comment and we will make sure to address it either next week or the week thereafter as we close out July, being our month of Excel, all about your productivity. So until next time, my name is Christine and I will see you then. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.